All right. So let's see when we appear. Okay, let me check. It's showing we are live. So, yep. All right. We have started getting comments.
All right.
Okay, great. All right. So, yep. Thank you, guys. Can you please confirm in the chat that you are able to see us fine and listen us fine? Can somebody please ping in the chat? Okay, great. So, hi, Anu, hi, Dilip, Sakal, Fidelis. Great, great, great. Okay, so without any further delays, today is very important day. Welcome everyone to Software Testing Mentor and RCV Academy. We have a very special guest, Peter Thomas, creator of Karate Labs and Karate Automation Framework. So founder and CTO of the Karate Labs. And just before I go further with the chat with Peter and ask some of the very important questions about automation. I was recently browsing through some of the automation tools which are open source that can solve one of my purpose within the current project. And there are paid tools I figured out, but then there is something which I thought could be open source, and Karate automation framework I pumped in, and I really was amazed that such a great automation tool is there for UI, for API, and there is so much functionality around performance and all of that. So thank you very much, Peter, doing such a commendable and great job for the community. And I want to really thank you for all your effort that you have put in the framework, and continuously you are so active on the social media. Whenever somebody asks questions, I have seen that you always go ahead and respond to those questions around the framework. So thank you very much, and welcome to the Fireside Chat on Software Testing Mentor and RCV Academy.
Thank you, Manish. Yeah, awesome. And thank you for the kind words. Thank you for saying such good things about karate and appreciating it. And I'm very happy to be here. And thanks for having me on, Manish. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Pleasure is all mine. It was great to connect with you, and then eventually you accepting the request to come live with me. So basically, yes, I'm so thankful. So, Peter, a couple of questions. Basically, I thought why not just get you on the channel and then ask some of the very pressing sort of questions that are there in my mind as well, whether we as a testing community or working in testing are doing few things correctly or not. So let's start with the first sort of question, basically something on your professional journey. So how has your professional journey so far?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I have been around in the industry for a long time. Let's leave it at that. No, let me
Mhm.
not.
Yeah.
It feels like too long sometimes. So if you were to categorize me, I would probably fit more into the realm of Java programmer. That's where I started. I still am a programmer quite clearly if you look at my GitHub and all that.
Yeah.
Uh, of course, had a very uh, I was fortunate to work with good companies such as Yahoo. The last company that I worked for was Intuit, and then I left Intuit to start Karate Labs. So I'll talk more about that. But yeah, mostly Java programmer. I am full stack, so I think I am. I like programming certainly, right? It gives me some kind of relaxation, and there's a certain purpose to what I'm doing now with open source. But overall, many years in the industry, traveled the world a bit. Fortunate because some of the companies that I work for, gave me opportunities to work with clients in the US, UK, Singapore, Turkey. So I've been around a fair bit and always been curious about automation and learning new things. Fortunately, I think that's something that probably gives me some of my strengths, perhaps. And in fact, in when I was working at Satyam, I met my co-founder, who's my good friend Kapil. That was 16 years back, and we've kind of come back, um, joined together, and started Karate Labs. We also got accepted to Y Combinator, so we are here to make it big, and we'll talk more about that. I'm sure, Manish. I'm happy to
Yeah.
share more about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Kind of I like making an impact through code. Open source has been a great way to actually do that because open source is this unique way in which you write code and the whole world looks at your code. And if they use your code and like you said, Manish, right, they appreciate it and you know you get that kind of feedback that kind of keeps you going. So I think I've been able to have this professional, day job kind of a thing and have open source also be there. And thanks to my previous employers who kind of supported the open source work that I've been doing. And yeah, it's been fun. That's a bit about myself, Manish.
Right. Yeah. 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 No, absolutely fantastic. I mean, uh, I love the line like that. Coding gives you some sort of, it's it's something that you are very close to, right? It gives you some sort of a piece that you do, right? And I feel something similar when I teach and when I test, basically. Yes. So
Yeah, and congrats,
can
you have
correlate.
70,000. I think you have 70,000 subscribers
Yeah,
on.
recently, yeah, it's kind of 71 now. So yes, it's growing
Awesome.
slowly, but yes, hopefully it will reach by end of the year 100K. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But yes, it's good. Yeah. All right. Great. So coming to the next question, Peter. So why did you come up with the karate automation tool when there were so many other tools there in the market?
Yes. So yeah, this is the origin story of karate, and it happened 5 years back. In fact, in the end of 2016, December specifically, at that time I'm working at Intuit. I'm leading a platform team for APIs, and yes, my team had to do a lot of testing of APIs. And one day the team was stuck with one API test that it didn't seem to become. It's one of the worst things that happens in a testing context, which is sometimes it passes, sometimes it fails, right? And this is what
Right.
people call flaky tests.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it was one of those situations, and the team called me in to have a look, right? Can I make sense of it? Can I come up with something? Can I solve the problem that they were facing? And so I looked at it, and then I dug into it. So what the framework was um, it was like an in-house written Java
Mhm.
program or a Java framework that used the Apache HTTP client and did API testing. And I didn't like
Right.
it at all, of course. So I'm very
Yeah.
opinionated,
Yeah.
and I felt that there had to be a better way to do API testing. And one of the things that especially caught my attention, or of course irritated me when I saw the test suite,
Hmm.
was that the parts that did assertions, right? That when you get a JSON response back and you have to go
Hmm.
through the payload and actually validate
Hmm.
that it is correct, I found that was nearly not being done, or it was done in the most convoluted way that finally you have this mass of Java code and you read it, you can't make sense of what the business is doing.
Right. Yeah.
And so on. And then files called other files unnecessarily, in my opinion, and you just can't trace the flow.
Yeah.
So I'm sure all of what I'm saying probably resonates with some of you. I hope it does, because I really want all of you to think about this if you're using such kind of frameworks. So yes, that was the trigger for me. So I went and did the side experiment. Hey, can I create a framework? I chose Cucumber, interestingly,
Hmm.
at that point, and I came up with something quickly that seemed to have some promise. Right, I liked it. It did assertions. I solved for that. I
Hmm.
also solved for XML also, which is interesting. That is a lucky coincidence, because on day one I did XML, and today Karate has both XML and JSON possible, and it's
Right. Yeah.
almost equivalently good. So yeah, this is December 16, and then I tried to do a little bit of evangelization within Intuit and get teams to adopt it,
Hmm.
and it didn't go really well. And the reason is, not the fault of the teams. You can imagine, right? This
Yeah.
random person comes along and says that he's created a framework. I'm
Right.
already using a good framework. I'm using Rest
Yeah.
Assured. Why should I choose this unknown thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then in the middle of all that, what happened was, I got the approval to open source it. Right, it was, if you look back, one of the best decisions ever. Right,
Yeah.
because when this went public and people started giving feedback, and immediately people caught on to, okay, this seems to work. It seems to do things better than what we're using and all that. So yeah, that's the story. The trigger was, yes, I was looking at the tests that my team was doing for API automation. I thought they were terrible.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, let me try and create something better. And that's how it happened.
Right. Yeah. So I think I can relate to some of my previous projects wherein the frameworks themselves were so complex that people ended up testing their own framework. So it was kind of testing the so
Yes, in
so
fact,
instead of testing the product, you are actually complicating your automation framework, and you end up testing the framework itself. And assertions are kind of so
it was the right tests, not code, which needs to be
yeah.
tested. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You that's where we'll discuss more. But yeah, we somehow forget the core of
If you get me started, this will not end in an hour. So be careful.
yeah. Yes. Yes. Sure. All right. Let's move on to the next question, um,
Cool.
which is on the similar lines. Okay.
All right.
So do we really need complex test automation frameworks? And are the testing teams losing sight of the core purpose of software testing due to heavy marketing of complex test automation frameworks that involve data structures, algorithms, Java, and like whatnot? Are we really doing
Data
justice to
structure.
testing?
Yeah, this is a lot. Let me. You brought up the topic of the commercial tools and complicated tools. Yes, I believe a lot of the tools out there are complicated. In fact, if you dig into the backgrounds of some of these tools, they are actually companies that acquired smaller companies and then tried to put these tools together and um, you know say that this is like a consistent set of products that does everything end to end and all that. So yes, there's some complexity there. But I want to let's leave that aside, and I'll talk about what's happening today. And in fact, I found your YouTube channel refreshing change, because I'll not name names, but there's a lot of content I've seen in the internet where there is this urging of people to, yeah, use data structures, use design patterns. I'm not saying that design patterns are bad, but I'm not sure that you need to apply design patterns for testing. As you said earlier, Manish, right? You suppose you have a purpose that you need to test some business end user flow uh, most of the time. And you should write the least amount of code to just get that job done.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's what I feel anyway. And I hope, because of this talk, I hope people don't come and throw stones at your house and all that. but
Yeah.
seriously, right? I'm quite disappointed by the amount of what I consider misinformation, right? That this, uh, you're not a good tester if you don't use design patterns, or you're not a good tester if you don't create and write your own automation framework. I think that's wrong. I think the people who are propagating this are doing a disservice to the testing community and to the whole software profession in general. I know these are very harsh words, but uh, as you can imagine, some of this comes out in my develop in my work on karate, right? Because
Yeah.
I sincerely believe that some things need to change in the way that uh, you know test automation, the whole community exists today. I think there's a fair amount of improvement needed. There's opportunity to do better. And as I
Right.
said, hey, in my mind, the best framework is where it stays out of your way, right? It just focuses you on what is the end user flow.
Yeah.
Can I replicate that in an automated way, of course, but can I, to the best of my ability, replicate an end user interaction? It might be a user going through a browser, or what's more close to my heart is the flow of API calls that you make
Absolutely.
when a user performs like a business transaction, right, in whichever
Right.
domain
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
should be just able to do that and nothing else, right? And the framework should give you everything you need out of the box. That's another
Yeah.
thing I really, I feel that I'm one of the few people who seems to say that in the testing community, which kind of I find very surprising sometimes. But you shouldn't be trying to write your reporting engine or assertion framework or connect this tool with this tool in order to just do testing. You should just use a tool, forget about the tool, and then get on with your primary purpose of validating that your end user is having the best experience. Yeah.
Absolutely spot on. I mean, looks like you have stole my
Mhm.
mind, Peter. um, in the automation frameworks that I teach as well, um, the point you mentioned, like we are not supposed to do the complex reporting engine. I mean, that's developers are there to help us, right? I mean, framework should be able to cater for all of that need. If we are basically putting all our effort as a testers or so-called SDET or whatever, it's kind of unnecessary usage or unnecessary use of the energy at a wrong place. That's what my feel is. Absolutely agree, and I don't don't see any reason that yes, I'm totally into it. I promote sort of same thing. I do have the automation framework series a little bit, some of the videos that I've already posted, and I've tried to simplify them as much as I can so that with the minimal code, we are able to test, right? And absolutely perfectly said, right? We shouldn't be writing such a complex code that we are lost themselves ourselves in maintaining that.
Yep.
So that's where this question was kind of always, it's always there in my mind. Why so complex automation frameworks that a person leaves? And this has not happened single time to me. This has happened so many times. You go into a new project, there is a framework that the new people, new team that comes in just scraps it, and they build their own with a design pattern with, and they don't simplify it because, and the moment it is complex, it's very difficult for others to basically pick it up, maintain it, and take it further, right? So it has not happened a single time. It in past 12 to 15 years, I have seen it happening so many times that reusability of that framework becomes a challenge if it is not simple. So absolutely totally agree on that. Let's move to the next question. So um, what should be the core idea behind choosing any automation tool?
Core idea. So I think we touched a bit on it in the previous, rant probably from my
Mhm,
side. But yeah, it should come with everything out of the box if you ask me. And
mhm,
let's talk about parallel execution, right? It's
mhm.
very surprising to me that most of the tools I see out there, including unit testing frameworks, actually do a very, I wouldn't say they do a good job with parallel execution, right? It is hard. There is a certain amount of engineering that needs to be done in order to get that to work perfectly. I have spent a fair amount of time on it on karate, and where we are right now is that if you run a bunch of tests, whether it's API tests or um, UI tests, and of course we even do performance tests. But if you do API tests and run them in parallel on 10 threads or something, you get one report.
Yeah.
That is surprisingly uncommon in the whole um, world of test automation tools. Okay, so to answer your question, first of all, yeah, is your tool having all these things, right? I have a laundry list of things that you should have. Does it come with assertions out of the box? Does it do reports? Can it run tests in parallel, right? And of course, there are some very basic things again which people don't think about to the extent they should. And one of my favorite aspects about a test automation framework that I look for is maintainability. And there's a very interesting there's a there's a reason I focus a little bit on maintainability. As you said, you just talked, Manish, about the fact that a test automation suite ideally should live on for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, your tests are actually alive until your software is still in production, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And people tend to forget that development, you you do this big development once, um, and then it just runs, and then you're doing maintenance, right? But and of course, your tests as well as your code, but people, I think, tend to forget that tests are as important as code because you still need to keep maintaining them
True.
day in and day out, right? Your continuous integration build runs Jenkins, GitHub Actions, or whatever, and then if you get a problem, how easy is it for someone new in the team, right, or someone who's not super experienced, someone who's maybe not a good programmer, right? Which is actually one of the things we feel proud of that we have actually solved to a certain extent with karate. So yeah, I talked about a lot of things. So to summarize, um, readability, maintainability, um, do the reports come out of the box? Does it do parallel execution? Can it do performance testing? That's like a bonus, but yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you should. If you let's put it this way, right? If you um, some people believe, and I regularly get into kind of conflicts with people who say, no, we should take different pieces, right? This framework for this, another one for assertions, another one for UI automation, another one for performance, and then we keep mixing them to the way we feel like, and that is better, right? There is one school of thought like that. I
Yeah.
disagree,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I feel right. If you can use one tool that does all of this well, why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
In fact, I think it's a better place to be. You don't
Right.
need to
Yeah.
retrain your team, as you said. Your team, anyone who comes in, and now I think we can certainly, we can feel good about the fact that karate has a lot of users. There's a lot of traction. We know the number of customers that we are talking to, right? And this has happened over 5 years. And as you said, a very very common problem in the industry, Manish, is that someone leaves the team, someone new has to come in and look at the tested automation framework and make sense
Yeah.
of it. And yeah, and then yes, unfortunately, there is this tendency in people to, if you don't understand the code, let's rewrite the whole
Yeah.
thing.
True. True.
That
Yeah.
is such
Yes.
a time waster.
Yeah.
It's bad. So yeah, your framework should be solving all these problems that we talked about. And are we perfect? Is there a perfect framework yet? Maybe not, but we are trying to get close to that ideal state, Manish. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Great. To add to that point, ease of use, right? And that's where I got into the karate, like the all the components that I usually had to pick and choose and then configure, report separately, assertion separately. So it's kind of a, I mean, there are paid tools that I have used which provide this whole functionality that karate provides, but that's an expensive tool. Um, and and with ease of use, if I say karate is much easier to use as compared to that paid tool as well. So So yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, ease of use was one of the thing that, I mean, I got started immediately. I started reading the document, and I was up and running in an hour or so. And in just another 2 3 days, I have recorded like 15 plus videos on karate automation. So, and there'll be like another 50 to 60 videos combined for API and UI automation, complete with the framework and everything. And that will be so easy, and it's solving the same purpose, like to test your APIs and UI, right? So without the hassle of all of those secondary things that we don't need to worry about as testers. So totally totally
Yeah,
agree.
like
Yeah,
just quickly, I have to jump in because you mentioned a couple of things which I forgot, which is logging and configuration, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Again, I see tutorials on the net saying, okay, put logging into your test automation
yeah,
framework, okay, like half an hour.
yeah,
And then configuration, how do you do it in a test automation
yeah,
framework? Again, another set of things you need to learn, and
yeah,
everybody does it in a different way.
right, yeah,
There's a better way. I mean, I can, I'll not say much, but the config system in karate was it's very unique, to be honest, because we use JavaScript. I think I know you know what I'm talking about, right? We use
mhm,
JavaScript, and then there's this bootstrap where this JavaScript uh, will will be the source of all the variables that you need in all of your tests, right?
mhm, mhm,
And the way I look at this, that how was I doing it in my previous projects, right? There's this properties file, and then you need a properties file over each environment. And
right,
then someone needs to be smart enough to figure out how to take that properties file and put it in all your tests. And then a lot of Java code is written for that.
right, yeah,
And if you make a change in that properties file, maybe you need to make a change in many other places to get that property.
right,
This is how
yeah,
Spring kind of does it. And we
yeah,
have this shortcut that works really well. So yeah,
mhm,
sorry, I just went on this rant on logging and properties files, but it
yeah,
irritates me, and I think you can
yeah,
see the irritation come out in this call a little bit. Yeah, that's why I
yeah.
created karate in some ways. It
And
seems to be working out well so far.
right, yeah, and I do have logging videos as part of the whole framework setup with one of the tool, um, and that's Selenium basically. So logging is separately, then we have assertion separately, reporting is separate. So how to read from properties file, how to read from Excel or external files. So all of that framework, if you have to develop, then
We got
I myself have all the videos, which are like 140 plus videos to explain all of that um,
Yeah,
framework
and
with
you've done
yeah.
the right thing because speaking of Selenium, right? Yeah, and you just covered one more important point, which I again want to add, which is data-driven testing, right?
Right,
Data-driven testing, everybody wants to do it,
yeah,
and there are many ways of doing it. Some people love TestNG because you can do data-driven testing with it
yeah,
and all that. But again, karate has everything built in, which is
right,
um, a lot of people love it, but I think some people who really have this itch, which, and again, I'm going on the rant here, right? I really want to tell the testing community it's okay if you don't write Java code, right? For some
right,
reason, especially, yeah, again, I don't want to name names, but there's a lot of folks who say, hey, write Java, and then, they add this aspect of
yeah,
design patterns on it, and then
mhm,
becomes worse.
right,
But yeah, coming back to your point, Manish, when you did a Selenium tutorial, you had to add assertions separately, and you had to add logging and configuration separately because Selenium doesn't solve that for you. It just does one thing, which is browser automation. All the
that's
rest of
correct.
the testing capabilities you have to add,
Yeah,
which is, and yeah, people who know me know that I have very, very, strong opinions on the subject versus multiple tools. Selenium certainly has been around a lot. I mean, it's a great achievement from the Selenium team that they have been around for so long, like 24 odd years or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
But you know, it doesn't do everything out of the box, which is
true,
very it's very important to me that a framework has to do that.
true,
But
true,
yeah.
absolutely, yes, yeah, totally agree on that. Okay. So moving on, where should the focus be more for software testing testers, UI testing or the API testing?
Ah, API testing. I'll explain. And yeah, this, and I want to, in case people think I'm biased or something, I don't think I am, because yes, I started karate as an API testing tool, but there is a very well mature, established UI automation piece with karate. And one of the great things about karate is that you can actually combine API testing and UI testing. You can mix and match in your test script, which is actually a great thing. I can give you tons of examples where
Yeah.
it makes sense. For example, you can do a transaction in your UI and then you can validate via the API. You can save a
True.
lot of testing cycles.
True.
So yeah, the point I'm getting at is, and keep in mind, I'm someone who's actually spent a lot of time on UI automation, and I've written a framework to do UI automation. I have done framework programming for browser automation, right? And I think it's one of the hardest things in the world. I'm not talking about creating a framework. What I'm saying is that automating a browser to represent a set of user actions,
Yeah.
that's actually somewhat easy. What becomes harder is the point where you need to now do assertions on the user interface, right? Did this number appear in this cell in this table, or did this label appear like this based on data? And this goes on and on.
Right.
And Manish, the typical problem in UI frameworks, which is flakiness, right? You write your automation, okay, it's green today. The next day, the developer makes one small change to the CSS or changes a
True.
name in the HTML,
Yeah.
boom. Okay.
True.
And then you're struggling every sprint to just catch up. And some teams give up, right? And then what happens
Yeah.
is your UI testing will just be there as like a cosmetic thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's green, sometimes it's red. It doesn't matter if it's red, let's just release, right?
Yeah.
That's a state.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a rant, but the point is, I have found, I believe that UI automation, where you need to take care of automating and then asserting, and more importantly, making sure that your UI automation is stable, that it doesn't start just breaking on every release, or every, if a developer sneezes, your tests shouldn't break. I believe writing that kind of automation is really, really hard. It's one of the hardest things. Actually, you never know. It might be even harder than writing code. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with all these problems, and there are technical reasons for it. If you now break down what happens in a UI automation test, you need to bring up a browser. The browser needs to connect to some URL. It loads a bunch of JavaScript, and then something is rendered. And some things take time to render depending on network speeds or the JavaScript, wherever it's complex. And then you need to go and click on it and then wait for things to refresh, and so on. And then there's very few options for you to, number one, locating. Everyone knows, right? There's this whole industry of XPath selectors and whatnot, or just
Yeah.
doing business of getting hold of an element. Once you
Right.
get hold of an element, you click it or you assert on it, right? You get the
Yeah.
text and all.
True.
But yeah, I think all of you are getting my point. This is horribly complicated.
Yeah.
Now let's look at API testing. You make an API request. It's like get, put, post, delete. Very
Yeah.
simple. REST fundamentals, HTTP fundamentals. It's plain text over the wire, nothing else. There's only one way to send an API. There's only one or two ways in which you get responses back.
True.
Errors are one. Let's leave errors out. But machines to talk to each other. That's a fact, right? And it's a good thing because it's simple. There's no complexity of a user interface, all the browser, network, JavaScript, rendering, colors, CSS, and all the horrible things that can happen if one of those things
Right.
don't.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
make a request, get some text back, and then you match whether that test is okay. It's
Yeah.
very, very simple. And today, if you look at all the APIs, a fair amount of your business functionality, right, your business logic, is handled by the APIs. Your UI is just doing cosmetic stuff, just
True.
showing you HTML tables, giving you a form, and then some buttons to click, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of your, if you agree that most of your business logic is, behind your APIs, test your APIs. At least start with testing your APIs. Make sure that at least you've got that testing strategy in place.
True.
And then you can start. Now, depending on whether your API testing is solid, you have some confidence in it, it's actually doing its job. It's telling you when you broke something by mistake, regression testing and all that. Then you can graduate to UI automation. And of
True.
course, this is not a rule of thumb. There will be some cases where the what's it called, the look and feel of the
Yeah.
UI and matters more. There's a risk that if something doesn't work on the UI, that it'll lead to a bad customer experience. You have to take those decisions. But I think you got my point. I strongly believe the best testing strategy is where you have a majority of your tests as APIs, right?
True. True. Yep.
And all of us know that we have limited time, right?
Yeah.
You really have to decide, right? Do you need to do more UI automation or API? I would strongly advise do more API
True.
automation,
Yeah.
and you can start with maybe a smoke test to do some of your critical user flows,
Hmm.
and then take it from there.
True.
At least
True.
that's what I think. I could be wrong here. And again, this is very hard. And I know that Manish, you are here. You have maybe an opportunity to start changing the world a little bit, because we're coming out of an era where when you say test automation today,
Yeah.
Manish, right? The first thought that comes to people's minds is browser automation, UI automation, the Selenium,
Absolutely.
playwright,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's unfortunate, right? It's been the case for a
Absolutely.
long time. There are
Yeah.
multiple reasons for it. One is because, yeah, APIs are relatively new in the whole
Hmm.
evolution of computing. And the other thing is, which I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. The reason why when you say automation and most people jump to UI automation straight
Hmm.
is because it's easy. As a human, you're very comfortable visualizing things, right? Buttons.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
people relate to user interfaces. There are very
Yeah.
few people who think of the world, that where you see applications like a shopping cart or Amazon or
Yeah.
YouTube, Netflix,
Yeah.
whatnot, right? APIs are there, but you see the user interface. People tend to
Absolutely.
focus more on the UI.
Yeah.
But yeah, here I am, and Manish, you also are joining me in this fight. Hopefully, to let's change the world. Please start thinking more about API testing. You should do UI automation, but I think you can do very less of it because it's a trade-off, right? If you put all of your
Absolutely.
money into UI automation, you will have to fight this battle every sprint on flaky tests and whether your UI tests are keeping up to date.
Yeah.
People talk about in-sprint automation. You can achieve in-sprint automation with API testing. I have seen it day in and day out in whichever teams I've worked with,
Hmm.
and of course the teams that use karate. UI automation is very hard, and you know why. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, um, totally agree with all the things that you have mentioned, Peter. And I think there is a shift, and I also promote sort of same thing. And there are many people who have started working on that path as well, like focus more on the API test, because and there is a testing pyramid which guides us basically why we need to focus more on API rather than the UI, because of the same reason that you mentioned. They are flaky tests. The developer sneezes and the tests are gone. The maintainability, it's so high. I
Yeah.
have seen uh, people just, there are a couple of people who are just maintaining the test cases, and they are not consistent. API test cases are by far so consistent that you will actually, yes, get and whole of the functionality you can basically test all of your functional test cases you can actually achieve through the API. So the most recent project that I have worked is kind of everything is UI is not even ready, just APIs, and we are doing the full functional testing. UI will be ready after 2-3 months. That's okay. Doesn't matter. It's kind of the in the last phases we'll do the UI testing, the look and feel, and the if there needs to be an automation to be in place, we'll do that. On that same note, um, what other important thing about karate that differentiates this tool is there is a use case for the API test that we are doing. There is a 302 redirect which redirects to the browser. So we have to go to the browser and do something and come back and maintain that flow of the API calls. So basically, and that's where I found, is there something open source that can give me this capability. And thankfully, karate is there, which can provide me that capability. And very soon I'll be doing a case study once I'm successful in all of that, and get a bit of approval that I can showcase it. But even if it is not, then I'll still do a sort of tutorial series how we can, because this is a biggest sort of challenge. And I'm not sure, I'm sure that I'm not the only one that is facing these sort of challenges. There will be thousands of other people who would be in sort of similar scenarios, and they just say, they would be thinking, oh no, we can't do with this with the API, we just stick to the UI, because this is not possible, right? So yes, great.
Awesome.
Let's move on to the next question, Peter. So if you have to give one message to software testing community, what will it be?
I think the first thought that comes to my mind is, yeah, don't write your own framework. Don't, I mean, it's like, if you use karate, great, but use some framework. Use some framework that has everything built in, or most of the stuff built in that you need.
True.
I and yeah, that's it. Just don't write frameworks from scratch. Don't get pulled along by the hype. There are some people promoting that, yeah, you need to learn how to
Hmm.
write your own framework. If you don't write a framework, you're not an automation engineer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I I can understand why that happens, but
And you're not as that
I just want to
software
urge
development
everyone
engineer in
listening.
test. And you're
Yeah,
not, yeah.
but I just want to urge everyone to think about, right, when you are, doing the best work of your life as a tester. It should just reflect very clearly in your end users, your business users, right, your
True.
customers,
Yeah.
whoever you're working for, whichever team you're working for. Are the customers having a good time? It's a I know it's, yeah, it takes time for maybe certain maturity to be able to see things at that level, but I just hope some of the things I'm saying make sense. But
No,
yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
don't don't get hung up on writing frameworks. The moment you are doing something other than testing, and as you said, Manish, earlier, right, if you're just doing engineering and trying to put together frameworks and worry about logging and configuration and all that, you're just being taken away from your core.
Hmm.
And it's finally that core of testing that
True.
matters. And let me say another thing that may make this a little more easier to process, hopefully, which is, um, there's a lot of talk in the industry about automation taking away the need for exploratory testers, or the quote unquote manual testers. I know it's not a great term, but let me just use it for making the point. And we believe at Karate Labs, and I want to make this very clear, right? The whole point of automation is that you get all the stuff that can be automated, right?
Hmm.
Let's focus the need for regression suites and what API testing in the fashion that Karate typically solves for. It is just to ensure that when you make a new release of your software, and when you have this team of multiple programmers tend to make mistakes. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And you just need to ensure that you don't accidentally make a mistake that screws up the user experience, or screws up
Hmm.
somebody else's code or somebody else's module. We know that that's the theory. That's why you do continuous integration, run Jenkins, see the reports, and you do this every time your code changes.
Yeah.
And the reason you automate that is because if you didn't automate that, you would be spending all your cycles. Humans will be clicking buttons and testing things.
Hmm.
And I want everyone to think about automation, that automation, when it's done right, gives you more time, right? We talked about an example. If you can just automate all your API tests, now you have some confidence that I can actually go and see whether the user interface is usable, right? Whether it's got
Absolutely.
accessibility, whether
Absolutely.
my users are having the best experience, whether
Hmm.
design, colors, the usability, human computer interaction, design, all those aspects, right? You can go and start talking to your users, watching them use your software, rather than struggle trying to make your Selenium test
True.
up to date and all that. I hope you get the point. I just want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
summarize by saying, think of automation as giving you more time to do real testing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. think of automation as giving you more power and time to basically, focus your testing mindset at the proper places, because our core purpose as testers is to test and to ensure quality. And that's what I teach to everyone. That's what I teach. Even though I have so many automation tutorials, frameworks, and all of that, still, and I think when I do all of that, and I switch to the simple sort of integrated framework wherein I do not have to spend time uh, in building all of that. That's where it basically opens up the whole, different perspective. Um, yeah, absolutely. Great. So let's move on to the next question. So you have built such a great tool, Karate Framework. How do you keep yourself motivated to keep going? And it has evolved, like for 5 years, and you're still doing it. So what are some of the tips?
Oh, man. So it is. It's a lot of work, to be honest. I didn't honestly expect this kind of a slog in some ways. It's been 5 years. Now I can look back and think about all the things I did right and wrong and all that. It's certainly very hard in the initial days when no one knows about your project and nobody's using it and you don't get any feedback. So you keep wondering, am I doing?
Yeah.
Is this worth it? Is this making sense? Fortunately, relatively quickly, right? People started using karate in the early days
Mhm.
and started getting feedback. That helps because when you hear positive feedback coming from somebody halfway across the world that you have never met, it's a good feeling. That's actually one of the best things about being in open source. You
Yeah.
kind of get these kind of interactions a lot of the time, to be honest. There's certainly negative interactions, like, and that's, as you said, yeah, part of. Sometimes you wonder, how do you get motivated, right? Because there'll be some people who demand things, who say, complain about it, things don't work. People ask questions. People don't read the documentation. By the way, I mean, huge kudos to you, Manish, because you actually read the karate documentation. I wish more people did that, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I'm also thankful that you're creating this short videos, because I know we are getting into this TikTok generation right now, where people,
Yeah. Yeah.
attention span, unless it's like 5 minutes, people can't watch the video. In fact,
Yeah.
my kids, they watch videos on like 1.7, 2.8. I mean, double speed. And I
Yeah.
really worry, right? What's it doing to the brains and all that? But
Yeah.
anyway, um, so where was I? Yeah, motivation. I think the whole power of open source is there. You create something. There is a, as you said, there is a certain satisfaction um, you get from creating something that's been helpful to other people.
True.
Then, if people contribute, you have the sense of community that, okay, you're together.
Hmm.
Open source is great for many reasons. I've been trying to do open source for a long time. That's also something I talked about, I think, in my kind of my career and my evolution as a programmer and a techie and all that.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's a great question, because why did I keep going? It's purely, as you said. I mean, folks like you will come along and say that this is good. This seems different in a nice, good way, in a very meaningful way from how automation has been done before. So I do feel good about making some positive change and seeing some of my ideas actually take effect. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the summary. It's a great question, and there's probably more I'm missing, but um, yeah, I think once in a while, when people tell you that things are good, that's one of the best things about a program. Programmers like to brag, to be honest, Manish. So yeah, open source. Again, for all of you listening, is a great way to, if you like people saying good things about your code, open source is one of the best ways to get that feedback. So yeah, just
No,
saying.
I think it's not bragging, Peter. To be very frank, it's actually really good. So I have used it, so I can say that it's actually really good and solves. I mean, there will be little issues here and there, bugs, etc. But that's part and parcel of the development. We all are human beings. We do make mistakes. So in testing, we miss so many defects. They end up in production, and it's like 16x extra cost to fix those. So that's all part and parcel of the whole software development life cycle. But Yeah, I think great point there. Yes, that your overall the sense of community that you get
Yes.
and the helping that the tool. Yes, absolutely. I think I hope that you just take it to absolute next level, and I'm pretty sure it will be in just very little time. It will be. Um, it's just a matter of like people getting to know. I think lot many people don't even know about karate framework, right? So it's kind of people haven't even heard about it. So like I heard two and a half 3 years ago in one of my projects, somebody named about karate, use karate, why you are doing this. And then we thought, okay, what's karate? And we didn't do anything about that karate that time. If we would have done something that time, things would have been completely different for us till now, right? So in all my past projects, I would have implemented karate instead of all other heavy lifting that I have done. So
Amazing.
so yes, great. So next question: what do you do in your free time, and do you have free time?
you know, yeah, you're right. I think that this is actually a known, you know, trope with open source maintainers, right? They are typically, they don't have much time. They're always, like I kind of hinted at earlier, there's this continuous stream of you need to do this, you need to keep up to date, upgrade things,
Yeah.
and so on. So, but if I look on the bright side, as I said earlier, also programming has been fun. Open source has been fun.
Mhm.
So I don't feel that I've missed out on not having like a life. But yeah, I do. I listen to music. The short answer is I listen to music. I do play music a little bit. My kids are into. They're actually pretty decent musicians actually. So
Oh,
it puts
great.
me to shame in some ways. But yeah, most of my time is, even like weekends and the odd time, is I am thinking of what to do on karate, how to make it better. You touched upon a very important point. We'll talk more about that, which is the awareness part. So yeah,
Mhm.
um, that's me.
Great. Okay. So that's good. I mean, your kids. So do you also you know are you also a musician, or your
I'm an
kids are?
amateur. Like I haven't formally studied. Yeah. So I made sure that my kids didn't have the same problem. So they have actually
Right.
studied music. They know how to read notation.
Oh wow.
My son is a very good keyboardist. My daughter actually
Okay.
plays drums besides keyboard.
Nice.
So,
Yeah.
but you know how the study scene here is. My daughter is now having to study for the exams and all that stuff. So the drumming
Yeah.
has kind of come down, which is quite unfortunate if you ask me. So I feel a little sad about that. Um, Speaking about me, yeah, in long back, yes, I was in my college music troupe, band, so on.
Oh, nice.
That's
Okay.
about it. So yeah, I do have
Maybe
that connect.
maybe we need to see the other side of you as well. Maybe sometime, like we'll go come live and you do some sort of music. So what do you play? So
Primarily the keyboard.
keyboard. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Um, so next and the last question for today, Peter. So what are your future plans for Karate Labs?
Um, and you talked a little bit about awareness, Manish, and that's a great point. And I was listening to you while you were saying that, and I was really thinking hard because, yeah, you gave me a great example. But 3 years back or 2 years back, someone mentioned karate, no one took it seriously, right? Because,
Mhm.
yeah, people just moved on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it surprises me. You can imagine it from my point of view. For me, karate is almost like my existence right now, right? It's like
Hmm.
a very huge part of me,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, which, yeah, which is interesting. And I never would have thought that. Um, 6 years back. So, and also partly an answer to your question as to what keeps me motivated, right? Myself and Kapil, my co-founder, we now consider it our mission to make karate be known to more people, because it's the right thing to do, right? We talked
Yeah.
about problems in the test automation, landscape, the community, things can be better. I certainly have a lot of opinions about what should be done and what should not be done. I could be wrong on some of those. I completely agree, and I'm always looking for feedback, and I do change my mind even though I may not look like I do, and all that. But let's come back to your point. Plans for Karate Lab. Number one, we really want to increase by almost like 10x the number of people who know about karate, and that
Yeah.
means a certain amount of um, what do you say, marketing. One of the good things is that we are now formally, for the last 11 months, we have started formally as Karate Labs. I have left my day job. In fact, that also, to give you some context about that, it was very clear to me at some one point in my most recent past that karate gave me much more fun than my day job. Right? I really wanted
Right.
to spend more time on karate. It was starting to conflict with what was expected for
Yeah.
me in my day job and all that. And I said, okay, fine, I want to work on karate.
Right.
And I called Kapil. He actually called me up when I won the GitHub grant that the India GitHub
Hmm.
organization gave out last year.
Okay.
And I said, hey, he was saying, you should just start full time on this. And I said, yeah, I've been thinking, do you want to join me? And then he thought about it, and fast forward, we are now here formally as
Right.
Karate Labs.
Yeah.
We are really starting to level up the awareness, uh, talking to all our customers, making sure more people know about us. And certainly, Manish, I know you're doing great in helping us do that, because I think you've just started churning out these karate videos, which is awesome. And to give you a little more context, yeah, big plans. Yes, we are thinking big. We are here to dominate, make a difference. We have all the pieces: API, UI, a test engine,
Hmm.
reporting. We have everything. You already touched upon it, Manish, that we do a lot of things maybe better in a surprising way than some of the commercial tool vendors. So we certainly are seeing a lot of traction, right? um, there is a lot of interest in moving away from commercial tools into open source options. So karate is
Right.
there.
Hmm.
The second point I want to talk about, Manish, is the user experience, and that's where, to give you a sneak preview, right? We are working very hard on IDE plugins.
Yeah.
In fact, stay tuned. You will hear a lot of about lot of lot of news is planned in the very near future, Manish, on our Visual Studio Code plugin. We are
Right.
going to do something very, very interesting in that space. And the idea is that, number one, make it easier for people to write tests, and to make it possible for even non-programmers to write tests. We are not there yet. Today, as you know, Manish, karate is this scripting option. You need to write some code, even though it's very, very simple code.
Right. Yeah.
The last part, I just want to put this as a teaser. There is a trend we are observing, which is remote development environments.
Hmm.
So where you don't need to install anything locally, but can still write code. And we at Karate Labs feel that we are well placed. We are already doing a lot of work and research into
Hmm.
how do we actually imagine this, Manish, right? You are looking at GitHub,
Yeah.
and then you want to make a change in a test, and you can edit it on GitHub or in a browser and then see it work, right?
Yeah. That.
That's the
That.
vision.
Yeah.
We feel
Yeah.
we are very close, and you're going to hear a little bit about that in the coming days. So that's
Oh,
the
great.
grand vision we
That.
have.
That's an awesome thing. Yes. Would love to see what's there next on that. Um, that's great. Yes. Thank you, Peter. I think so. I'm done from my end. So thank you very much, Peter, for answering all of these questions. Now we'll take some of the audience's questions if they have. Um, there are some questions already. So let's see. Um, so there is some appreciation from Fiddlis. Great job, Peter.
Thank you, Fiddlers.
Uh, and Shakal. Um, sorry if I've mispronounced your name, but hi, Peter. What is the next for Premium Karate Labs? Will the open source feature be slower now?
Short answer, no. It's a great question, and I think I should have said that. One of the things that we are very committed to at Karate Labs is we owe our whole roots to open source. I personally, I think, embody the whole open source philosophy. So you have this commitment from us that everything that's there on GitHub right now as the karate source code is going to be continuous, is going to be always open source. We are not going to go and retroactively start, making things commercial and ask you to start paying for things. No, we certainly not that. We certainly don't have that intention at all. So I hope that answers your question. No, the open source features will continue to come out. It may have slowed down a bit recently, but the reason is I think we have reached a certain level of maturity for API testing, especially UI testing is almost there, like it's there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So and you can also look at the history of the issues being turned around. I don't think there's any slowdown. I'm not sure what you mean by slow. Whether the rate of development is slower. Certainly not. But yes, the premium aspect. We are a company finally at heart, so there is a need to um, monetize. But short answer to the question, open source development continues. Once we get, we are certainly looking to hire, but we are being very careful about not hiring too fast. But we are looking for some effort to go into the open source because that has to continue. Without the open source piece, we don't have anything. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great, great. Yeah, thank you, Peter. I mean, yes, I was. This is a very good question. I was also on. I thought, yes, this is something which we need to, like that open source will stay there and is going to stay there. Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
But in case you're still wondering, right? Karate is an MIT license, which means you can fork it, you can do anything you want with it. As I
Right.
said,
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
there on GitHub is open source and will be open
Right.
source forever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Okay. Another question is from Anurup. Peter, any specific reason for naming it as Karate Framework?
Okay, I can give you the official answer. There's actually no specific reason, or I was looking at some wordplay with karate test and so on. But if you rewind to the time I came up with karate, the first version, I said I actually looked. I had karate in my mind. There's also a little bit of a side story where I'm very interested in Japanese culture. I watch a lot of Japanese content, for example. I actually have learned how to read and even speak Japanese to some extent. So things Japanese are very close to my heart in some ways. So karate was a great choice of a name. And what happened, what clinched the deal was when I did a Google search for, is there any software called karate? There was none. And I said,
Oh.
okay, I'm going to take that name. And I think when you start searching for karate, you're going to start seeing more and more of
Yeah.
the non-martial
Yeah.
art karate turn up. So I
Yeah.
never regretted the name. It's actually a pretty cool name. Certainly better than names like Cucumber. So there's my
Yeah.
typical joke. Sorry, apologies to the Cucumber
Great.
team, but yeah.
Yeah, great, great. Okay. Okay, there is some. Okay, so yes, I agree. I've tried rest assured and always stuck at the complex return types and casting the responses itself rather than working on assertion, which current karate completely eliminates. So that's
Yeah,
a
yeah, thank you for that. I just want to add, and I've talked about this, but um, keep in mind that I'm a Java programmer. I'm like a hardcore Java programmer. That's like I owe my career to Java, right? But I'm saying when you do automation, don't use Java. That is one of the things I'm saying. It actually shocks people. And I just when you said talked about rest assured, it just reminds me to say that yeah, karate is a way in which you can actually do API testing and do complex response assertions without writing a single line of Java in a
right.
good way. And I just want you all to think about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, true. I mean, if we can do same thing simply or in a very simple way, why to complicate things? I totally agree to that. Okay, another very important, I mean, very important question. Yes, Abhilek, are there any jobs available at Karate Labs?
There are, so please reach out. There's one I'll just give a little bit of a hint, which is if you can demonstrate contributions to open source, it gives you a better chance. Is all I'm saying. being an open source company, there are plenty of ways to contribute to open source, pull requests, look at existing issues, and so on. So, but yeah, short answer, yes, and do feel free to reach out and explore the options. As I said, we are being very, very cautious and slow about hiring right now. We want to keep it that way for some time because we have big plans and just want to make sure we have enough runway to do some of the stuff that we intend to do. But short answer, yes, do reach out, Abhilek. Happy to talk to you on that.
Great, great. Okay. Another question is automation takes away manual testing. Hemant.
No, I think I said that very clearly. Automation does not. In fact, to repeat, what I said a few minutes back, automation should give you more time to do the right kinds of manual testing, right? I am, you know, I believe in exploratory testing and understanding the user's perspective. You step into the user's shoes and understand what it means to use the software. You need to do all those things. The sad thing is today teams are just struggling to catch up doing some kind of automation and simply not having time for these things. So my perspective, short answer to your question, Hemant, and thanks for asking, is automation should give you more time to do testing.
True, true. Yeah,
In fact, yeah, that reminds me. I have this quote. I have to say this quote. I was meaning to say it, which is automation is easy, testing is hard.
true.
Okay. And I want you all to think about that. And it comes back to see, if I want to explain more, today using any programming language, you can make an API call. It's just 3 lines of code. URL, maybe a GET request. That's it. It's actually
Yeah,
2 lines of code.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The hard part is doing the assertions, validating whether the response is correct.
True.
That's testing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
by that, I just want to submit to you all, automation is easy, testing is hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Testing requires, like you think you actually put yourself in customer shoes, and you think a lot of other things that you need to take care about to ensure that the functional, non-functional aspects of the product are
Yes.
actually met. Yeah, great. Okay. Thank you, Manish, for making this opportunity. Thank you, Vaida. Fidelis. Peter, what is your advice for someone who is transitioning to testing in terms of entry skills and tool requirements?
Um, yeah, of course, I'm terribly biased, so you take this advice with a pinch of salt. But do evaluate karate because I believe karate has the best option for, let's say, people who are not programmers, who are maybe having very limited experience with programmers. I kid you not, there are many examples of our customers saying that their business analysts, their product owners were able to actually write tests, right? We don't advertise that because I don't want to give people a misleading sense of that you can just do magic with karate. You can to some extent, but okay, let's uh, not go there right now. But uh, karate, I just want to summarize by saying, and I apologize if it doesn't really answer your question, but karate is a great way for someone who's not a programmer to get into automation, number one. And I think one of the cool things about karate, which I really want to talk about right now, which is karate actually starts to flex along with your learning, right? So we've seen multiple cases of folks who started using karate and then they started exploring, okay, I can write this little bit of JavaScript, I can do a little bit of if then conditional logic, and they started becoming better programmers. This is of
Yeah.
course a very strong, bold, big statement to make, but I'm saying it, and I've really had some people come forward and say that this has happened. So my advice is, at least in my very biased opinion, of course, karate is actually a great way in which you can start testing without much complexity. You don't need to be a programmer, but then along the way, you start, the tool will actually guide you into learning some programming concepts.
Yeah.
Um, Finally, you are the best judge. Do evaluate it and let me know what you think later.
No, I think I totally, agree, Peter, on that because what happens is the moment people try to start learning the absolute complex framework right from the beginning, that and the reason is that market is that way. Recruitment happens that way, that if you know these tools and these add-ons, then you are good tester. But actually, um, the overall mindset is never being judged, or in the interviews that's not being, emphasized. So I think it's more of people not understanding what is actually, what they should be looking into people when they hire. And when you start learning something, especially in the automation, try simple and then start building on top of it. And that's how actually I started. I mean, I started with the most complex sort of, because open source, like Selenium was the sort of, I think, first open source um, tool that I used, and it was kind of first of its kind that was there at that time. So it took quite a while for me to basically get a hang of it, the overall framework and everything, because I have to bake everything to make it a full tool. Now we have the opportunity here to basically go ahead with the tool and see how everything functions, how other modules are reporting, logging, etc. And that will give everyone understanding that yes, these are the modules that will be required in any automation framework. So absolutely, yeah. Okay, let's move on. There are a couple of more questions. So, okay, let's see. Okay, yes, just comment. It is a great tool and opportunity for tester to get into automation API and UI testing. Easy to use. So there are a lot of users. I mean, yes, I mean there are so many users already for karate now. So yes. Any more questions, guys? Otherwise, I think we are over an hour. So if there are no more questions, then thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, everyone, for joining and asking some of the great questions. It was absolute pleasure to have you, Peter. And great to have you and great to chat with you and
It
then
was
see
great to
all.
be here, Manish. Thank you for doing this. Looking forward to seeing 100,000 subscribers very soon, Manish.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
for all
you.
the good work you're doing on your channel. Yeah, as I said, your channel is different. It's very refreshing. So really appreciate the work you're doing here, Manish. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. So there are some thanks for you as well. So thanks. Thank you, Manish and Peter. Fiddlis. All right. So great. Thank you, everyone. And Peter, will see you again sometime when you have some new announcement and features for the karate. So I'll continue doing what I'm doing. So you'll be seeing a lot more content coming out. And please comment, correct if I'm not doing something right in the videos, or teaching something which is not, you know um, sort of. But I do read all your document, and then from the document I go ahead and
Oh
um,
man, yeah. If you've read the documentation, I think you're all good. You can tell there's been a lot of time and effort that's gone into that documentation. So I
yeah,
think you're
absolutely,
well
yeah.
on the right track.
Yeah, it's kind of it. I mean, it makes it so easy. I mean, it was a smooth ride for me to, like, looks like so easy. Just go through the document and then start setting it up. And as I set up, I just record the videos. Why not help the community? So absolutely great. Thank you, Peter. Pleasure to have you here, and have a great day ahead.
Yep. Take care, everyone. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.